some stories don't end. They echo through decades, through letters never sent, through the silence that wraps itself around everything that might have been. This story is one of them. A quiet story. A true one. Told by a man who waited his whole life to understand what happened. And maybe why. It begins in 1979. But it doesn't stay there. Because memory doesn't follow time. It follows feeling. And some feelings refuse to fade. If you've ever had someone leave, without warning, without explanation, without closure, this story is for you. Not to reopen the wound, but to honor what it meant. And what it still means, even now. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Is there someone in your past you still think about? Not with pain, but with wonder? Someone who walked out of the frame but never really left the picture? If you feel safe, you can write their name in the comments, or just the year, or the last sentence they said. Because sometimes the act of remembering is the first way we let go. His name was Thomas. He was 24 in 1979. Tall, bookish. The kind of man who noticed quiet things, how dust looked in sunlight, how people held their breath in elevators, how some words carried weight long after they were spoken. He lived in a one-bedroom flat above a bakery in a small New England town, worked as a librarian, didn't own a car, wore brown corduroy jackets with pens always in the breast pocket, even if they didn't work. Eleanor came in on a Tuesday, late afternoon. Rain on her coat, hair tied back like she didn't care. But her eyes, they were oceans. She wasn't from there. He knew that by the way she looked at the rows of books like they were foreign territory. "Do you have anything on astronomy?" she asked. He did. He walked her to the far corner. She picked a book on constellations, checked it out, and said, "Thank you, Thomas." He hadn't told her his name. She came back the next week, and the next. Always borrowed something different, always returned it early. They never made plans, but she always arrived at 3:40 p.m., like it was unspoken ritual, like the universe had drawn a circle only they knew how to step into. They didn't kiss. Not once. But one day he handed her a book of poetry instead of a receipt. And she said, "This is how I'll remember you." He never asked what she meant. And she never explained. It was early October. The trees had begun their slow burn, reds and golds curling at the edges of every branch. That afternoon, Thomas arrived early, straightened the shelves twice, wore his best shirt, which wasn't saying much. It was still wrinkled at the collar, but it smelled faintly of cedar and soap. She didn't come at 3:40. Didn't come at 4. He told himself she might be late, that maybe the bus was delayed, that maybe... And then, at 4:17, she walked in. No book bag, no umbrella, no borrowed time. Just her. And something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She didn't walk to the astronomy section. She didn't ask for recommendations. She just stood by the front desk and said, "I have to go." That was it. No explanation, no reason, no mention of a return. Just, "I have to go." And she smiled. Not a full smile. The kind you give when you're trying not to cry in a public place. Thomas opened his mouth to speak, but the words got lost somewhere between his ribs and his throat. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and placed it on the counter. Then she turned and walked out. The bell above the library door rang once, then silence. He stood there, didn't unfold the note for 5 full minutes. When he did, there was only one sentence inside. "Don't wait for me." Thomas didn't chase her, didn't call around, didn't search the city records or ask the post office if anyone named Eleanor had forwarded mail. He just folded the note, tucked it inside the book of poetry she once touched, and placed it back on the shelf. 3rd row, 2nd from the right. It stayed there for years. He never checked it out again, never told anyone why he avoided that section. But sometimes, when the library was quiet, he'd stand near it. Not too close, just close enough to feel what he used to feel. Life continued, as it always does. He got promoted, bought a car, adopted a dog. He even dated someone once, for 6 months. She liked jazz, and he tried to. But something always stayed folded inside him, like that note, like that moment, like that girl in October who looked at him like a poem and vanished like a page torn loose. He never blamed her, not once, because he knew, somehow, that whatever made her leave was bigger than either of them. But that didn't stop the ache, didn't stop the wondering. She became a season he never stopped expecting. Every time the leaves changed, he thought of her coat. Every time it rained, he imagined her walking through it, quiet and unbothered. And when he turned 50, he went to the astronomy shelf, pulled the poetry book from the row. The note was still there. "Don't wait for me." But he had. He always had. There are some goodbyes that don't echo loudly. They hum, soft and constant, like a distant train you're not sure you imagined. That's what she became for him. Not a wound, not even a memory, but a hum. A thread woven through the decades that tugged gently any time the light hit the shelves just right. He never told his children about her, never explained to his wife why certain songs made him quiet, never spoke her name aloud after 1983. But on the day he retired, he packed up his desk slowly, box by box, pen by pen. And when he got to the poetry shelf, the one with the folded note, he opened the book, held the paper in his hand, and for the first time in years, read it out loud. "Don't wait for me." Then he smiled. Not a sad smile, not bitter, just soft. Like something had finally landed. Like time had finally stitched shut what never had a proper seam. Because sometimes we don't get the ending we want. We don't get the explanation, the return, the apology. But what we do get is the power to stop carrying it, as if it broke us. He placed the note back in the book, but this time he added one more line beneath hers. "I waited anyway, and it was still worth it. Not every love story ends in love. Not every connection is meant to last a lifetime. And not every goodbye needs to make sense, to leave something beautiful behind. Sometimes the people who disappear still shape who we become. Not because they stayed, but because of how deeply they were felt before they left." We all carry someone. A face in the crowd. A laugh in the dark. A letter that was never written but is still somehow memorized. And maybe that's not a burden. Maybe it's a quiet kind of love we're allowed to keep. Unspoken. Unfinished. But never unlived. So I want to ask you something. Is there someone you never got to say goodbye to? Someone who changed you, then vanished, a chapter you never got to close? You can share it in the comments. Their name, the year, the last sentence. You never know who might read your story and find peace in their own. And if this story felt like something you've carried, if it reminded you of how long memory can hold what the heart still honors, subscribe. We tell stories here that don't rush to heal, that don't need to end perfectly, that sit with you the way a friend would, quiet, honest, and always returning. We'll be here again tomorrow night with more, because some stories are too sacred to leave untold.